in Ohio by the Obama campaign and the Democratic super PACs, which worked Ohio harder, knowing that the state could be a firewall, knowing that they could hold the electoral map, that they could hold Ohio. They hit him harder there than anywhere, and you can still see in the internals how that shows up in terms of Romney's image in that state.
Okay.
And so, Mika, I said that they had to run the table if they lose Ohio, or they have to expand the map. One area where Romney's people are talking about expanding the map, Michigan.
Exactly. You mentioned Michigan. Mark Halperin, and a new poll finds Mitt Romney is closing in on President Obama's once comfortable lead in that state. The Detroit News WDIV Local 4 polls found that among likely voters, the race has tightened to be within the margin of error. Earlier this month, Romney was trailing President Obama by approximately 6 percentage points. And with signs that Michigan is once again in play, the pro-Romney super PAC Restore Our Future launched a $2.2 million ad buy there, and the Obama campaign is countering with its first network TV ads in Michigan. The ads are expected to begin airing today and will run through Election Day.
So, Mark Halperin, Michigan. Well, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, Michigan. That's a good poll, right?
It is.
Michigan's in play now?
I mean, if you think that the Quinnipiac poll is right about Ohio, then the Obama explanation of why they're going into these states is more credible.
These states being Michigan, Minnesota,
which is not, oh my God, the sky is falling, we're losing everywhere, we need to play a lot of defense, but rather, they can't win Ohio, so they're looking for another place. So we've got enough money to make sure that nothing goes wrong. The president's not going to win these battleground states by the same margins he won by last time.
Yeah.
There's some natural tightening here. Most of these states elected Republican governors 4 years ago, or 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
And so the president would be happy winning these states by 2 or 3 points.
Michigan, though, 2.5 points, John Heilman. This is one of these states that, we Republicans stopped expecting to win when Ronald Reagan retired. It's like you usually put it in the Pennsylvania category. Do you believe Mitt Romney's within the margin of error in Michigan?
Well, I tend to think that I tend to give the benefit of the doubt to good polls, and so I think
this is a good poll.
That it's a fine poll, and it's close. I'm interested to see when Governor Romney or Congressman Ryan makes a trip to Michigan, and that'll tell you that they actually believe that there's a chance of winning Michigan. As of right now, I think Ann Romney's been in Michigan relatively recently, but watch the travel schedules. Right now, as Mark pointed out before, Governor Romney's down in Florida today, doing 3 stops in Florida, and so, we saw the tightening in North Carolina too. So, this map's getting complicated in a lot of ways, but watch the travel schedules of these guys, and you'll see whether the extent to which they think that's actually a place that they could actually pick up.
Friday through the end, Governor Romney's campaign is doing a huge surrogate thing to try to counteract Bill Clinton to some extent, who's a super surrogate all by himself. So McCain, Rubio,
what do they have?
Meatloaf, Kid Rock. They're all going to start in Ohio and then fan out. And some of that fanning out will be to Pennsylvania and to Michigan with some pretty major surrogates, maybe not the candidates themselves.
So the battle continues over which candidate, of course, in these Michigan and Ohio are bigger champion of the auto industry, a lifeblood of many Ohio towns, with Mitt Romney's campaign running a radio ad accusing President Obama of allowing manufacturing jobs to be shipped overseas. The ad says under President Obama, GM cut 15,000 jobs, but is planning to double the number of cars built in China. And the ad says Chrysler also plans to start making Jeeps in China. But a General Motors spokesman told the Detroit Free Press, quote, "We've clearly entered some parallel universe during these last few days. No amount of campaign politics at its cynical worst will diminish our record of creating jobs in the U.S. and repatriating profits back into this country." Okay.
Really? What do you think of Cargate?
Cargate. Well, they shouldn't lie.
So I think it's objectively untrue. The ad. I think that pretty much ends it, right?
Okay.
It's false.
No? What Romney said on the stump was false.
Yes.
The ad is true.
Right.
It's misleading, but it's true.
Explain what you mean.
I'm sorry.
So there's production in the U.S. that exists. They're making Jeeps in the U.S., selling them in the U.S. They're talking about making Jeeps to sell in China.
Right.
Romney initially suggested on the stump, wrongly, that they were going to move all Jeep production to China, including selling building them in China, selling them back in the U.S. That'd be bad for American workers.
Bad.
What the ad refers to is the fact that rather than making Jeeps in the U.S. and shipping them to China, they're thinking of making Jeeps in China to sell in China.
Which they already do.
You actually
The insinuate, the suggestion of the ad, the implication of the ad is blatantly false.
Hasn't Jeep been doing that for years?
Yes, as every multinational car company does in the era of globalization. You go to the countries where you sell the cars and you make them there, just like Toyota makes cars to sell in America and Ohio. It's like their ad is basically suggesting that we're against globalization, we're against multinational firms in America doing business abroad. It's ridiculous.
Oh my God! Just to be accurate, also you just want to add in that like companies like Ford are now exporting, and it's helping us to different countries.
But it would be better for American workers if we built Jeeps in the U.S. and sold them to China.
Sure.
Well, there'd be more American jobs.
No, well, not necessarily. I mean, the company might be less profitable then.
It might.
I mean, the point about the reason that GM does this is because it makes more money by producing Jeeps in China for China, as it says, repatriating the profits and then using that money to invest in American jobs in America. That's how globalization works.
But by the way, I can't believe this morning that you, Brooklyn hipster, are such a globalist. But
you really are.
But you also make deals, though. You also make deals with China. You say, they'll say, we'll buy X number of cars, and you build those cars in our country. And if I'm not mistaken, some American companies, or some American companies will do the same thing here, too. I mean, I don't know. It's, I think it does point to possibly desperation.
Yes.
Do we think? In Ohio?
Maybe that's just the way they operate.
Trying to win.
Any way possible.
Looks a little desperate to me.
Okay, so let's talk about a nationally a new poll that's out, released by the New York Times.
CBS News poll shows a virtual dead heat between the two candidates. President Obama leads Mitt Romney by just 1 point, 48 to 47% among likely voters nationwide. President Obama still holds a comfortable lead among women, and Mitt Romney enjoys an almost identical advantage with men. Among independent voters, Romney now enjoys a 12-point lead, 51 to 39%.
Well, now, why is that? What's John Heilman? Why is the president losing independent voters by double digits? What's inside that number? I mean, it's been breaking that way. Is it Obamacare? Is it what is it?
Well,
what is it?
I think that's where the swing is, right? That's independent voters are. I mean, there's a question about independent voters and the extent to which in any given set of independent voters where they lean. There's no question that independent voters right now, as currently constituted in the electorate, are more Republican-leaning than Democratic-leaning. There are people who are not Democratic partisans, and there are people who are undecided. That's where the swing in the electorate is, and it is surprising to me. I think it's problematic for President Obama to be in the position he is. And in fact, if you look at the previous number, the gender gap is not nearly as large as many people thought.
Can we go through these numbers again?
The reason Romney's competitive at national level right now is because he's winning independents at that level, and he's actually performance with women is actually pretty good.
So let's look at the gender gaps, guys. Can we put those back up? Because John brings up a really good point that the gender gap among women is tighter than usual for Republicans and Democrats. And then with independents, Mark Halperin, you had independents going Democratic by 16 points in 2006. You had them going Democratic in 2008. It's hard for the president to be the candidate of change and bipartisanship moving forward with independents breaking away from him the way they are. This is looking a lot more like a Karl Rove 2004 election than a Barack Obama 2008 election.
And even in the Michigan Quinnipiac poll that shows the president leading substantially, he's losing independents. And that is the strongest argument the Romney campaign will make against all these polls that show the president up, which is you may be oversampling Democrats to some extent in some of these polls. If Romney's winning independents in Michigan, in Ohio, I should have said, if Romney's winning independents in Ohio, they think he's going to win.
So why would pollsters, and this is an important question, the Romney people say they're oversampling Democrats. Then we see in some of these polls, Democrats +9, +8, +7. Why would media? Because obviously the pollsters' credibility is on the line. This is how they make their living. This would be like buying a car whose doors fall off. People feed their children based on the accuracy of their polls. So why would they skew the sample overly Democratic if
because that's what's coming back in their survey?
Yes, I mean, it's not like the pollsters don't start with a set idea of what the electorate's going to look like and go and impose that on their sample. They go and they take a random sample and they ask people for their party ID. If you take a random sample of the electorate and the party ID comes back at Democrats +9, the pollster doesn't go and mess with the numbers to get it to be the right distribution of partisan ID that they want. Some pollsters do that weighting. Very, very few, and very, very few credible ones do that. They would say, this is what the electorate's telling us. You know, you might not like what the electorate's telling us, but that's what they're telling us. They're telling us that that's Democrats +6 or Democrats +8. It might not turn out to be wrong, but that's what they're getting from their surveys.
Most Ohio elections are won by the candidate who wins independents. It's just a fact.
And Romney's winning independents,
according to most polls, including this latest one.
Yeah.
All right. A quick look at the enthusiasm gap could be a problem for the president. 68% of Romney supporters indicating they're very enthusiastic about voting versus 59% of Obama voters saying the same thing.
So, Willie, again, we show an Ohio poll that shows the president solidly ahead. And then we show polls that show independents breaking strongly for Romney and Romney voters being a lot more enthusiastic about the candidate.
And one other note, in the state of Ohio, only 4% undecided. Only 4% undecided voters and 3% in Virginia and Florida. So I don't know how much movement there's going to be late. There are only 4% of the people who have said, I don't know yet. So if the president has a 4-point lead, a 5-point lead, whatever the latest poll is telling you, Romney doesn't have a lot of room to move within those numbers.
All right, coming up, we'll talk to senior advisor to the Obama campaign, David Axelrod, NBC's Tom Brokaw, NBC News political director Chuck Todd, and The Daily Show co-creator Liz Winstead will be here. Up next, the top stories in the Politico Playbook with Jim Vandehei. You're watching Morning Joe, brewed by Starbucks.